The top entrepreneurs aren't smarter than you, they don't work harder than you, and they're not more talented than you. They just make better decisions. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to make decisions like the best entrepreneurs so that you can scale your business to the next level and do it without working all day, every day. Anytime I've shown this framework to my clients at selfmastery.co, their businesses grew faster, their workload decreased, and their confidence in their decisions skyrocketed. So this isn't theory, this works. Let's dive in. Most entrepreneurs believe that making better decisions is about seeing the next step ahead, what happens immediately after they take the action. But that's not how reality works. Every decision you make sets off a chain reaction of consequences, some predictable, some completely unexpected. And if you're not thinking several moves ahead, you're making blind decisions. Let me give you an example, okay? Let's imagine you ran a multi-six-figure coaching business. Things were going well, but you wanted to scale to 7 figures. And one day you get an idea. I should launch a group program. It'll let me serve more clients, make more money, and free up my time. Sounds smart, right? You're creating more leverage by allowing more people to work with you at any one time. And so you build out the program. You launch it. You sit there and wait for that 6-figure paycheck to drop into your bank account. But it flops. And you're fucking shocked. Why on earth did it flop? You did everything right. The offer was good. Your sales funnel was amazing. You wrote the best emails you've ever written. Well, it's because you only thought about the surface consequence. If I do this, I'll make more money. But you didn't think about the nth order effects. Maybe your audience wasn't primed for group coaching, so sales were lower than expected. And then the time you spent building and launching meant you had less time to continue doing what got you to where you were. You had less time for what was already working. Of course, that also means maybe your one-on-one clients got less attention, leading to lower client retention and a lower LTV. You also didn't realize that by adding another offer, you exponentially increased your operational complexity and made your customer journey slightly more confusing. And so instead of increasing your revenue, your business stagnates for months. One seemingly smart decision derailed your growth. And it's all because you were thinking like an average entrepreneur, just one step ahead. Now, of course, that's obviously just an example, okay? That's not me saying you shouldn't launch a group coaching program. It's not me saying that if you do that, your business is going to fall apart, okay? I'm not saying that at all. That was just an example to get the point across. But it does go to show one of the major differences between entrepreneurs who make okay money but are stressed all the time and work all day, and entrepreneurs who make amazing money with less effort and way less stress. Those top entrepreneurs who work less but profit more, they think of every decision as a domino. The first domino falls. When it falls, it knocks over the second, which knocks over the third, which knocks over the fourth, and so on and so on and so on. But here's where most entrepreneurs go wrong. They look at domino number 1, the initial decision, and think this is a good idea. They never step back and ask what happens when all the other dominoes start falling. For example, you might think I should scale my ads to get more customers, without asking what happens when I scale. Can my systems handle the volume? Will my CAC, cost of acquisition, go up over time? Or maybe you think I need to work more hours to make more money, and never ask, if I keep working like this, will I burn out? Will my decision making get worse? If I work more, do I actually get more done to a higher quality? Am I actually more productive or more effective? Or maybe you think, this opportunity looks great, I should say yes. Instead of thinking, if I say yes, what am I saying no to? Does this move me toward my long-term vision, or is it a distraction? This is where most entrepreneurs fail. They optimize for the first effect, the first consequence, instead of the entire sequence of consequences that occur as a result. And this is where elite entrepreneurs separate themselves from the pack. They don't just see the immediate effect of a decision. They map out the entire chain reaction before making a move. And look, let me give you a super simple example to make this super clear. If you choose to eat junk food, the first order consequence that like everybody understands is that your body has to process that junk food, okay? But what most people don't realize is that there are a number of nth order consequences after that. So junk food, for example, plays with your dopamine and insulin levels, which I'll save you the science, but it basically creates a second order consequence of you craving more junk food, which creates a third order consequence of you being more likely to eat more junk food, which creates a fourth order consequence of you ending up in a calorie surplus, which creates a fifth order consequence of you getting fat. And also this just creates a self-fulfilling feedback loop because you eat more junk food, which makes you crave more junk. But the worst part that nobody considers is that every consequence can have multiple consequences. For example, when you eat junk food, you have the first order consequence of processing the junk. But then guess what happens? Not only do you crave more junk food, but your blood glucose levels spike, then fall, which then has the fourth order consequence of you having an energy crash. So the fourth order consequence is your mental performance then falls, and the fifth order consequence is your work quality and performance suffers. The sixth order consequence is that you don't do the work and therefore your business suffers because you're not doing the work, or at least you're not doing it well. And of course, this also has a feedback loop because when you crash, your body starts craving more junk food so that you get that short-term energy spike again. So can you see how now a seemingly innocent decision can have such ripple effects? Because not only do you have one chain of consequences, every consequence can have multiple chains of consequences until if you map this out, you could have a really complicated and extensive probability tree diagram. And sure, you know, I just used the example of an obviously bad decision to eat junk food, but this applies to every decision. And obviously, some decisions will have positive nth order consequences. Some will have a mixture, and some decisions might start off with a positive first or second order consequence, but end up with a negative third, fourth, and fifth order consequence. And so look, most entrepreneurs aren't smarter than you. They're not, okay? They're not more talented than you. They don't work harder than you, okay? I worked with multiple 7-figure entrepreneurs and some 8-figure entrepreneurs, right? They're not special. They're not more talented than you, whether you're at 6 figures or whether you're at 7 figures. The level above you that you're looking at, right? Whatever that level is, they're not more talented than you. They don't work harder than you. They're not smarter than you, okay? If you've built your business to 6 figures already, you're pretty damn smart, you work pretty damn hard, and you're pretty damn talented, right? All they've done, all those entrepreneurs that are that level ahead of you that you're looking at, all they've done is that they've just trained themselves to see the long-term effects, the nth order consequences of the decisions they make better than you. Okay, that's all they've done so that they can make better fucking decisions. Like, Jeff Bezos is going to be an expert in this because even if you take it back, when Amazon was growing, they basically had a choice, like every company does. Take quick profits to satisfy investors, set themselves up for a lavish lifestyle, or reinvest every dollar back into growth. Most CEOs would have chosen profits because really the whole goal, at least for a publicly traded company, is to get your investors good returns, okay? So choosing profits is the obvious first order move. Investors want higher returns because higher stock prices make everyone happy, but Bezos thought several moves ahead. He realized that if Amazon prioritized investing into customer experience, speed, and infrastructure over short-term profits, it would create a flywheel effect, one that would compound into market dominance. So what did he do? He reinvested everything, which may have had some negative short-term consequences, but the overall long-term consequences were positive. And the result? Well, the result is pretty damn obvious, okay? Amazon became unstoppable because Bezos was thinking in decades, not months. He was able to see the nth order consequences of both options and choose the option which had the best longer-term potential. And that's exactly how you need to start thinking in your business as well. So how do you do it? Well, step one, most entrepreneurs think in days, weeks, or maybe months, and that's fine. You know, working in quarters especially is a great idea, so long as those quarters relate to the longer term vision that you have. But elite entrepreneurs think in years, and then they work backwards so that their daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly decisions add up to their long-term plans. So before making a big decision, ask yourself, what does this look like if I play it out for the next 1, 3, or 5 years? This immediately forces you to consider consequences that most people would just ignore. You know, maybe you decide I'm going to launch a group coaching program. If you ask yourself, what does this look like if I play it out for the next 1 to 3 or 5 years? Maybe you think, fuck, this might scale to me needing 10 coaches and a big team in 5 years. I don't want that. I want something lean and simple, even if that limits scalability a bit. And so now what you can do is either choose not to run the group coaching program or be conscious of how you run it and scale it so that you can stay lean and simple without needing 10 coaches under you. So really step one, it's all about extending the timeline and asking yourself how the decision plays out over years. Step two, so once you extend the timeline, you want to trace the ripple effects, the nth order consequences. So ask yourself what happens immediately. What happens as soon as I do this? This is the first order effect. What happens as a result of that? This is second order. What happens as a result of that? This is third order, okay? A simple example here. Let's say you're thinking about raising your prices. The first order consequence might be that your close rate drops. After all, it's a higher price, so less people will be able to afford it. The second order consequence might be that every client you sign is instantly worth way more due to your higher prices. And so the third order consequence might be that you make more money whilst working less, since you need to work with less people, so you have less time to fulfill whilst making more money per client due to higher prices. But the fourth order consequence might be that if you don't get results for your clients or provide the service they were expecting, you'll have priced yourself out of the market. So you see how this works, right? The first consequence seems super negative of this decision. Your close rate drops. Nobody wants that, okay? If you look at your data sheet and your close rate drops, you automatically think, what have I done? I need to fix this. But when you look at the bigger picture, when you look at the second order consequence, you see that you make more money per client, which when you get into business economics, that gives you better room for scalability, all the rest, but I digress, that's for another video. Then when you look at the third order consequence, you might see that you might make way more money whilst working less due to those higher prices, and now you require less customers to make, X dollars. But then the fourth order consequence might mess you up. It might be negative if you're not careful and you don't get results. And look, most decisions are going to be sort of like this, where there is both positive and negative consequences. It's rarely entirely positive or entirely negative, but by mapping out the nth order consequences, you can now weigh up the pros and cons and decide for you, because it is a decision that is up to you. Whether the pros outweigh the cons, or if you're willing to do whatever it takes to offset the cons. For example, with the fourth order consequence, you can easily offset the chance of not delivering to your clients and them having a poor experience and therefore pricing yourself out of the market by focusing ruthlessly on client experience, product and results. But only you can do that. Only you can decide if that is something you're willing to do. And by mapping out the nth order consequences, you're now aware that that consequence is possible, and now you can do something about it. Okay? What you can then do, now that you've mapped out the nth order consequences, is build a simple if-then framework. So, for example, if raising prices leads to a lower conversion rate, then I'll increase authority positioning before the launch to try offset the drop in conversion. If scaling my ads increases CAC, cost of acquisition, then I'll optimize retention and LTV first to lower my CAC. If saying yes to a new opportunity dilutes my focus, then I'll decline and double down on my core offer. All we're doing here is figuring out the longer term consequences through mapping out the nth order consequences and identifying ways to offset any potential negative consequences, and in turn, you now are aware of problems before they happen. So you can then decide whether to follow through with the decision or not, based on weighing up the pros and cons, weighing up the consequences, and that's entirely up to you. Nobody else can make that decision for you. And if you do follow through, you can be proactive about the negative consequences. And look, you're not going to be 100% accurate with the nth order consequences. That's fine, okay? It is impossible to be 100% accurate. Like, if you had to guess what you're going to be doing in 1 hour's time, you might be 99% sure, but you quite literally cannot be 100% sure, because yes, you might have a schedule, you might have a great idea of what could happen, but anything could happen in that 1 hour time span to throw off your schedule. And so it's not 100% guaranteed what you're going to be doing in exactly 1 hour's time. And as you expand the timeline from 1 hour to 1 year or 3 months or 10 years or 1 week, your accuracy with predicting consequences and what will be happening then falls. The accuracy decreases because there's just so many more uncontrollable factors that have longer exposure times to happen. So don't worry about being 100% accurate, okay? This is simply a mental model, a framework to help you think longer term and make better decisions in your business, okay? That's all this is. The goal is not to predict the future, but more so to give you the opportunity to weigh up the pros and cons that you would have missed. You now have greater insight into how an idea might play out in reality. You can decide if the decision has a positive long-term outcome, or if you're willing to do whatever it takes to offset the negative long-term outcomes and turn it into a positive long-term decision. You will not be 100% accurate. Things change. We don't have complete information of any decision. We're blinded by biases and incorrect paradigms, but the goal isn't to be all-knowing. The goal isn't to completely eliminate risk with this entirely, okay? The goal is to give you a tool that you can use to make better long-term decisions. And obviously you can couple this with whatever other tools you have for long-term decision making, but this is a fantastic one to use, because at the end of the day, business is simply a game of strategy and execution. And you can't do either if you can't make good long-term decisions. Doing this means that you're not like most entrepreneurs who don't think past the first consequence, who are constantly fixing problems they never saw coming, who rush into decisions, who optimize for the quick win and never think long-term. And then they wonder why their business feels chaotic, why they're stressed, and why they have to work all day to grow their business, and why they, get quick spikes in revenue but then massive troughs. It's because they're optimizing for the first order consequence. They're not thinking the longer term. You can now, when you do this, act more like elite entrepreneurs, okay? You can operate differently. You think differently. You move strategically because you understand that every decision compounds over time, because they all do. And here's the key, right? The more you train yourself to think in and-order consequences, the more aware you are of what could happen. And so the fewer mistakes you make, because you have the opportunity to be more proactive. Therefore, the fewer mistakes you make, the faster you scale, the more leverage you gain over your time, energy, life, and business. This is how you break out of the cycle of busyness and into high leverage decision making. And really, this whole idea of and-order consequences it's a play on systems thinking with inputs and processes and outputs and feedback loops and all the rest. So if you want another mental model to help you truly think like an elite entrepreneur, watch this video here. I'll teach you how to think in systems.